We would now ready to bring on our next presenter, Miss Lois Hiranaga, with Spirit of Ganbatte. And here she is.
Hi, everybody. Glad to be joining you folks. Today is the day. Thank you, HFNA, for having me again this year. And why don't we get started and view the video, Spirit of Ganbatte.
Lois Hiranaga is a native of the beautiful island of Maui, and she has extensive background in horticulture and co-authored the Neotropica Hawaii Tropical Floral and Plant Guide. She is a member of the American Institute of Floral Designers and has presented main stage performances at AIFD symposiums in 2011 and 2022. In 2023, Lois had the honor of being one of 3 float judges for the Pasadena Tournament of Roses Parade. Yeah, she is the owner of Lois Hiranaga Floral Design LLC, which is Maui-based, specializing in destination weddings and corporate events. Now let's give a hand for Lois Hiranaga.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and the invitation from HFNA to present once again. Many returnees, which is wonderful to see, like Annie and Mike. It's kind of like the annual Hawaii trip and back to the Hawaii family. We look forward to this event. As Kathleen mentioned, my background is really weddings, but I really am transitioning away from weddings, and more of my floral work is now community service and events such as this. I'm finding more enjoyment of leaving the wedding work behind. And so what we're doing today is very far from wedding work. And it was a wonderful opportunity to branch away from something you normally don't do. So structure building is really Hitomi's forte, and I've known Hitomi for 18 years, and yet structure building has never been my something that I aspire to. And when I'm presenting next to Hitomi, I always think I'm going to do the opposite of what Hitomi does, because Hitomi does it so well. And just my nature, I'm very detailed oriented, and I really don't want to do something that I'm going to fail at. This installation here, my title is called Spirit of Ganbatte, which translates to such words as perseverance, giving it all you got. In a competition, it would mean you could tell somebody, Ganbatte kudasai, like to give it all your best. I've always kind of felt that when I am in floristry or any aspect, I'm always trying to achieve better. And even if I have a recipe that I'm like really happy with, I'm still trying to improve on it. And I think that's pretty much instilled in the way we grew up. And I kind of feel that that has come from my parents, who were very, very hard workers. I would say they were workaholics. I was always with my auntie, who loved flowers, and probably at the very young age got me into loving flowers, because we would do weddings for the neighbor next door, the cousin next door. And when I grew up, I always thought I was going to be a florist. I never thought about what job I needed to look for out of college, and my background is actually marketing and management. I was like, I didn't have to think, okay, what corporate company I'm going to work for, because I always thought I was going to have a flower shop. But it took me 16 years to actually get into flowers after college. My brother has one of the most state-of-the-art nurseries in the state of Hawaii. So I was caught up in family obligation of helping him for 16 years. So background is actually ag-based, growing-based. And I think that's a wonderful way to start because you understand how plants grow and what makes a plant do well from the growing aspect. Neglect, or in Hawaii's conditions, it's like perfect because everything is very vigorous and grows very sturdy. It can handle the elements, especially here in Hawaii. But let me get into, my program is not so much about what different techniques you can do, but what our installation is about. And it is inspired by being here in Liliuokalani Gardens, being a public garden, and why we have this garden. And it was dedicated to the Japanese immigrants who came from 1885. This garden was because of the Japanese immigrants who came to work in the cane fields. And I am of Japanese ancestry, 4th generation, so it was very personal to understand or feel what my ancestors must have felt like when they came to Japan, came here from Japan, and why they came. And it was only because of this activity that I researched it. I think being 4th generation, you don't think about so much those things, and you caught up in everyday life. I never asked my parents about it. And now most of that generation has passed, or the ones that are still alive have memory issues. So it's hard to really understand what happened, and most of the information has to come back from literature or Googling. So what I did gather was it was in 1885 that the Japanese first immigrated here. And the first group that came was 153. They came as contract laborers and were getting a monthly pay of $4 per month. They had food and lodging and their passage from Japan. So the first group was 153, but it was interesting because they went under such adverse conditions when they got here. How many actually stayed and how many actually went back? And only about a third returned back to Japan, even after having worked here so hard and given those harsh conditions. 2/3 remained in Hawaii and continued, and I think it's because of the saying kodomo no tame ni, for the sake of the children and the future. So I imagine then that life in Japan was even worse than what they experienced here to not return. So my thought process was the design that we're going to be creating, and that's why I want to explain this, is so when you do the design or create, if you choose to work in the afternoon, you understand why we're doing it, what the story is to the design, and why it's done in a certain way. Because we are here at Liliuokalani Gardens, it is a Japanese garden. I think it's very important that it has that sense of place. So in other words, this piece, that's the installation, could be left here. It looks like it belongs. It's not like we had a flower show for the weekend. So the idea of the Japanese coming to work in the cane fields, to me, was a very tiring experience. Day in, day out. Wake up, work in the sugarcane plantation. I have very few elements in the design, which is very, very unlike what I normally do. Basically, we were all given bamboo, which is the core of the design, and it symbolizes strength and agility and the flexibility. So this is actually perfect for the story because it represented what the immigrants had to go through. And I think everybody here in the audience unless you're pure Hawaiian or Native American, you have immigrant history. And having coming to America, there's something you can connect to. You know, they left some land to come. But in this case, the park, which is actually the largest, and Katie can correct me, it's just over 25, under 25 acres, but it's the largest authentic Japanese garden outside of Japan. But okay, going back to me, the aesthetic of Japanese garden is going to be very simple. You're not going to be loud, calling out for attention. Everything you should be more subtle. And this design really needs to blend into the surroundings with the bridges, the torii gates, the pagodas, the tea house. But the design itself is an interpretation of the Japanese coming. So it's based on repetition, because I felt that their life was very repetitive with not much going on aside from going to work. And it was, to me, it sounded like, when I read the history, more like an indentured servant. And even with my my grandmother, you know, you might have a job, but they still ask, you know, the Luna, the boss, would still ask you to come if you work. So my grandmother worked for a family, but my mom was the oldest, and her sister would have to go over in a kimono and serve tea when they had parties. I don't think that was part of the contract, you know? So, but they endured. And I think that's what the bamboo, you know, it's strength, perseverance. No, you have a purpose of being here, why you're being here, and it is for the betterment of the future generations. So the design really is, it looks like a tunnel, which is like a passage of time. So you're gonna, it's actually like living through that repetitive every day. And it's going to really change as we add flowers. And the single element flower is the oncidium, which is yellow. It's called Dancing Ladies. These were grown at Greenpoint. I don't know if you folks had a chance yesterday to see these. Okay, so these are oncidium lemon mele mele. They have the very bright yellow. The throat doesn't, you don't have the markings on the throat, and it's very, very vibrant. And this is the mediums. They actually have much taller ones. The design had to be built around material I knew I could get, because I wasn't going to pack up 4 bags of product and bring it from Maui this time and stay up all night packing. So I asked Neo, can you supply me with? I was trying to really be, okay, there was 153 immigrants who first came. I wanted 153 oncidiums. And some people, you know, you would think some people, they're going to just come to Hawaii, make money in the sugarcane, and then they're going to send it home, and they won't be back. They'll do their contract period. But that's not the case. People decided that they were going to root themselves here and be part of the community, and this is where life was going to be. So it was also very important to get potted, because the potted orchid represented more permanence. It's not impermanent. So I ordered from Hilo Orchid Farm these beautiful orchids that he hybridized, James Fang hybridized, and it's called Sweet Sugar. And this Sweet Sugar is a lot taller than I've normally seen, but they are absolutely, like, his operation is state of the art as far as growing, and as being a breeder, he's known internationally for all his crosses. So that was the choice of potted orchids and cut orchids. Initially, this design has become very, very fluid. As all of us in the floral industry know, when you open your box, you know what you're going to get. It's not necessarily what you ordered. So these orchids are a lot bigger and showier. I thought this was the bomb before, and then I was like, oh my God, look at these. The flower size now is at least double, don't you think? It almost looks like this one is this equivalent to 5 stems. So, and also the conditions here worried me. We have no refrigeration. How are the flowers going to hold up from possibly Monday or Tuesday, where we usually have refrigeration. So initially, these were all going to be potted in organic containers, which are spheres from the local hardware store. I'm not a good builder. I'm not good with power tools like Hitomi is. So generally, and I do work by myself with weddings, so you try to buy things that you can reuse. And it's 2 hanging baskets. So I'm just using that, flipping it on top. And this is what I was going to plant all the potted orchids in. Now, just because of the size of the flowers and the showiness, what's going to show up best in the installation, we've had to make some adjustments. So at that point, the idea was to change all of the potted orchids into kokedama forms. And this is your super moss, sheet moss. But like I said, Hawaii grows amazing product. You can find bun moss, and you can find sheet moss here. On Maui, I actually find moon moss growing in the crux of the eucalyptus trees. You just need the getaway car and be able to park on the side of the road. But we didn't have enough moss because sure, I ordered 3 cases. I expected to use some of Sue's, and Sue's shipment was short. So I got to show you, because this is something that Greenpoint doesn't sell, but something they had. And really, I wanted to do an all Hawaii program. But look at this. This is what's growing here. And I know they have it on Maui too. So as working florists, we got to just find ways to be able to keep the flowers in, as much flowers as we can. So that's some of the shortcuts that I would do back on Maui, is where I can collect moss and stuff like that. I generally do that. Same with this. This is a chestnut branch. I thought it'd be really pretty to paint it this color, because I think it's a very Japanese color. I don't know how many of you have had the privilege or just been to Japan. Shu-iro vermilion is usually found a lot of torii gates. There's actually the bridge across the way. And always when designing, I'm very concerned about sense of place, and I thought this would be a beautiful color to incorporate. And to me, it represented the family tree. And I don't think it's a design that has a beginning and an end, because the generation's still coming, and we're in Japanese society is thriving, and you have a lot more self-expression now. It's not that regimented role that when they first came, they were thrown into, right? Incidentally, when I chose this color, I didn't realize that you can go to the paint store, like Home Depot is where I went, and I said, "Oh, can you show me your color deck?" And I really love color. And she looked at me like, "Why?" And I said, "Oh, because I have a certain color I want." But I had my fabrics with me. And I didn't realize if you take a piece of fabric and you show them a piece of fabric, they just put it under the computer and they mix the paint special for you. And this is just a sample size. So being as fussy as I am, of course, I bought 2 cans because I wasn't sure if this is exactly it. And I decided to paint this was a 1-piece branch, the whole piece, but I couldn't get it here. So I shipped it over, cut it in half, and this is my first attempt at painting. And as I painted this with a sponge brush, very inexpensive, I was painting this brush and I thought, oh, Hitomi would just laugh watching me paint this because of all the imperfections in it and being impatient. I just didn't, you probably should do 1 coat. Would that be right? You do 1 coat and then come over But I'm like dabbing. Pretty soon I'm getting a headache, and I'm thinking to myself, I must be trying too hard. Or this color is not soothing to me, because I would normally not do anything orange like this. But that's, I wanted to share that you could always go now, to like a Home Depot and have a color. I was a little worried that I love color. Color is really important to design. To me, that's what people will see first. So if you got a color combination that's very appealing, generally they're gonna love the design versus colors that don't speak to them. I was very worried that this palette in such a big space would just disappear. And choosing the proper location, where you're gonna be. We did this event here just after COVID. And the rock formations just was calling me. And Russell was on my team, he was on the A team, and we did a beautiful, I think you may have seen it on social media if you have, open arch. We were so sunburnt. I went home, I was just blistering on my arms. The plants didn't like it either. We called for a tent, get us a tent, because we weren't going to shoot photography till late afternoon. And so this time it was like, no, we have to find a site that has shade. And a lot of, when you're doing these outdoor installations, which we do a lot here, you can only control so much because the weather is, you just don't know what's going to happen. Wind is a major factor when we were doing weddings, and so you have to build even stronger than you possibly think so that the weight of your flowers is not going to be thrown over because of the wind factor. But so I was worried about color and what the impact. So that's why I chose to add in the vermilion, and I thought it would be more artful, by doing the painted branch versus just a green branch. But also Hawaii is known for all their bright aloha shirts, and when I went to the fabric store, I said, I need to tie in. What is the bridge? What color is going to bridge this to the vermilion? And I found this batik. And then, some things just speak to you. And I thought, wow, that would be really pretty. And being a design in a park, a public space, this design has to be, to me, very interactive for the public. Because it's us here, but it's open to the public. So, and we have 5 fabulous designers here. And I needed more pop, in other words. The design needed a little more pizzazz. And if we feel we need this after the flowers go in, this is what we'll use. But initially, it was supposedly an interactive design that the public could add to the design. Or like if you see in the dramas and stuff, they go to the gate and they tie on the lock. It's like the love lock, or they put the message, for good health or whatever they're wishing for, and they tie it on. So initially the thought was people could write their message and leave it on the design so that it became a personal design, and they could connect with it. Also, another thought was, how do you get people sight, sound, smell, your senses is also other ways to get people to want to check out what you're doing. And I happened to be at a Japanese restaurant on Maui, and as I was eating there, I said, wow, this feels like I'm in Japan. And it was just this really hole-in-the-wall restaurant, but what they had was chimes. And it just happened to be blowing in the wind, and I thought, just the sound of the chime is making me think like I'm back in Japan. It was very calming and soothing. So I felt that if I added the chimes into the design, that has a very peaceful and you wonder what's happening, what's going on. So it may draw people to come and see, and yet Hawaii, it has this Hawaii pull to it because the rest is very subtle, which I think is very Japanese. And that's basically what the design is about. It's very simple. I think it goes with the aesthetics of the sense of place. It's the passage, like that tunnel is what life would be like. If you imagine yourself back in 1885 coming as an immigrant and working in the sugarcane fields, but with the concept that everything that you're doing and it's okay because you're looking for towards the future. And I really think that's how my parents were. And I think it's been so ingrained in me that when I do things, sometimes I have to learn to let it go because I get too caught up in the details and in wedding work and such. Sometimes you have a big wedding and you think it's a huge order, but then you put it in the location and it just dwarfs down and it doesn't feel like this huge wedding that you just spent 3 days or a week preparing for. It just like shrinks down to the basics. It didn't seem like it was that lavish and opulent unless it is one of those very, very, very lavish weddings that the very ultra rich have. I think what I'm trying to instill is when we do the design, I think, or when you want to be in that mindset that we're not slapping this together, it's very intentional. There was a deep thought process in the choices, in the color, and it's typical that I'm going to do a design. I'm going to pick something that really has some meaning and heart to me, that I'm not going to take 3 stands and create something simple that I could get dressed up and go to the party. It had a message, and it was very important that I stuck to my guns. And I know Hitomi and I had conversations over the phone. She goes, "How big are you going to make this?" And I said, 2 parking stalls. And she's like, "No, you can't do that." I'm like, "But I have to. It's about repetition. You don't get that feeling if you do something short. It has to be an experience of feeling that. It's a little bit monotonous, but not too monotonous, right?" And I was kind of irritated. So, right, Hitomi? I'm being very honest. Hitomi and I have known each other for 18 years. And so she knows I'm super detailed. And she also knows to tell me, you got to let it go. And I think last night, Phoebe Anderson, where is she? In the back. I called her to help me. Because when you take on something like this, you just don't want to take it on by yourself, especially when product is generously being donated to you. And that is what I'm finding. When you do community service, you get what they give you. It's not all ordered because now it's free. You come up with a concept, and it is so much more fluid now. You think you're going to build big things for the float. We just did the Maui County Parade. After 6 years, they didn't have it. We did a call out for flowers. I'm thinking they want big arrangement. And all the minks were this short. I mean, he was so generous. He gave 50 of them. But they were this short. And I'm like, okay, that would have been great for the wreath donation project. Not this. But so it becomes, I'm finding it's like now you just have to be so much more fluid and be able to change. So I am learning, Hitomi. After 18 years, you see, Sue is giving me that because this is a big step to let it go. But that's what I am finding. as it's becoming more community service oriented, you have to ask for donations. You get what you get, and you have to go according to their timeline. Because I kept on saying, I should have just bought the bamboo from Greenpoint and told them I wanted an 1.5 inch outer diameter with a 1-inch opening so that I could put the water tube right in it. And if you can you give me a slant cut on the bottom so I could stick it in the ground? The ground here is very muddy. I asked for 20 bamboos, so I figured they're not going to have stakes for me. I need to buy my own. I didn't feel that I could put that burden on the park. We went and bought stakes. I figured 18 is ample. This is not a heavy design with a lot of product. But you know what? It wasn't. It was spinning in the dirt, in the dark last night. And then it was like, okay, this is not going to work. I'm like, I feel like just going back to the balls. All you're going to get is 5 balls and plants in it. And the other thing is, your location is so important. I've been looking at the mongoose, going back and forth. And it's right where, of course, I decided to do the design. And from being from a grower's aspect, they love flowers. Then I asked KT about the mongoose. And I said, okay, are they daytime or are they nighttime? She said, they're daytime. Okay, we can move the balls back and forth to keep them with the flowers. But then she said the rats are nighttime. And the rats love flowers too. We used to grow potted mums. And I had a customer call me and say, I woke up this morning and there's no mums on the top of the plant. It's almost like a joke. Somebody came and like cut off all the flowers. Literally, you have a mongoose or a rat. And I was thinking, okay, I'm gonna put all my orchids right by the iris. It looks like it belongs right there. And tomorrow, all we're gonna have is green. So, that could happen. We're gonna do the installation today. We're gonna take a lot of photos because we're not sure what it's gonna look like tomorrow. But that's the thing about this kind of designing. Normally a wedding is done, you go and you strike it and you break it and then you're home. But we had 4 days here. That this thing should look good because it's open to the public on Sunday. But we're trying to put more orchids up now, less orchids I'm in the mongoose home. I'm invading their territory. So we may now have just the spheres with the branch, maybe chance 50 orchids. I mean, 5 orchids, not 50. And the rest we're hoping to put up into the structure to maybe still have orchids on Sunday for the public to enjoy. So that just tells you when you're going out to a location, all these other considerations have to be made. I mean, you can only control so much, and that's where I'm learning that you gotta let it go. And I'm always like, no, keep going, improve, and get it better. But I think from wedding work too, I've realized that not everybody appreciates those details. I think once somebody kind of thought I was a crack up because I said, oh, I put the babies on the ferry. That's my bridal bouquets. I was sending the flowers to the Four Seasons, Lanai, on the ferry, and I treat my work like that's really part of me. I'm giving that, and that's, I think, the attitude when you string leis. You are giving yourself in these things. And so I said, oh yeah, I put the babies on the ferry, and I don't think she got it. Quite got it, what I meant. But you know, after that, I was like super relieved. I always, after a job, I always treat myself to a really nice meal because of that effort. And it's like painting this branch. I literally thought I was concentrating too hard to do it right because my sensei here would look at it and say, oh, You can tell this is her first time. But I think for those of you who choose to work with this in the afternoon, it's a very simple design, clean design. What we want to do is create something that I think is a tribute to those that came before us. And also, I kind of wanted to, I saw that the Japanese, when they came, there were a lot of people that stayed here. So to bring it back to our industry, it's a tribute to all of those breeders, whether they were Japanese or not, because of course Mr. Fang is not Japanese, but there were a lot of backyard growers who stayed, and then you had all those beautiful obake anthuriums that were developed. And well, Tessie, I think you have your professor. He's of Japanese. Is he still alive? You see, they've all passed on. But they gave so much. And we are all a product of what our parents gave. And I think this piece, to me, is a tribute to our generations. All right, thank you. Look forward to having some of you join me. Okay? Aloha, my name is Lois Hiranaga, and I am doing this display called A Spirit of Ganbatte, which is a dedication to the Japanese immigrants who came to Hawaii in 1885. I am myself from an immigrant family, fourth generation, and so it had a personal message to me in building constructing this design here at Liliuokalani Park. For me, designing is very important, that you consider the aesthetics, the sense of place where you are at. And this huge garden here that forms the backdrop is pretty much the inspiration, because this garden itself has a rich history to the Japanese immigration. The park itself was in 1917 dedicated in tribute to the Japanese who came to Hawaii Island and worked in the cane fields. When I thought about the thought process of the design was when the Japanese came, they left Japan, and why did they leave Japan and why did they come to Hawaii? And it was for a better life. They felt they came with nothing, so the design itself should be very, very simple. So the elements in the construction is bamboo, which came from the park, again, a sense of place, but bamboo symbolizes strength and agility, and felt that the Japanese had to embody that when they came. And the oncidiums, also known as dancing ladies, in the color yellow, represents new beginnings and outlook. So it was really to the future of what the immigrants was looking forward to, and yet having to really go through and persevere through all the hardships of plantation life. It actually, being of Japanese ancestry, it brought home how my parents and the generations before really felt that everything was for the next generation and the future generations, which they say is kodomo no tameni. So this installation is really, to me, a tribute to all their hard work, energy, what they brought in hopes of a better future. So let me talk a little bit about the design itself, which really it was very fluid in coming up with what you actually see here. These beautiful oncidiums are actually potted. We took off the pots and used moss, so we call those kokedamas, and then attached the kokedamas with rustic wire. And the reason to actually choose the potted orchids was because it symbolizes being rooted into Hawaii. And we also do have some cut flowers, which would be, I would consider would be more impermanent. And interestingly, most of the people that came from Japan didn't return to Japan. I think I would have imagined that they would have come from Japan thinking that they're going to earn an income and possibly go back. But the majority of the Japanese that did come did stay in Hawaii and integrated into the culture and society of Hawaii. So we have the cut flowers, which is the impermanent, and we have the rooted plants as kokedamas, and that was intentionally again chosen because that's what was going on. You have they're going to live here and set up life here, which in fact I have chosen to incorporate the branch painted in this vermilion color, and that's really symbolizes the like a family tree. And as I said earlier, the design was very fluid. Initially, all the potted orchids were going to be planted in these spheres, and because we're in a natural surrounding, all the containers for me needed to be organic. It needed to be long here, and it needed to be very simple. Again, life was simple then. It was more about work, but it's also a Japanese aesthetic. So the design needed to have a very simple quality, but yet an elegant quality, and still look strong. So that's here we have only two elements really in the design. One is the bamboo, which symbolizes the strength and flexibility that the immigrants, when they came, had and brought with them, and they had very little when they came. So we have few elements, and yet it's about repetition because life was very, very repetitive for them then. And as we had the next generation come on, I felt that each generation would be able to express more spontaneity. Our family we're into our 6th generation now, and felt that, it's okay, we can use more color now. And in actuality, all the strips really tie in the color. The shuito or vermilion color, which is often used in Japanese shrines and temples. And you also see it in the park itself too. There is a bridge way off that way. So again, it's bringing a sense of place into the design. And the feeling, I think, is that when you come through this design, it's an interactive design. So then the viewers who come through should feel like they're going through this path or this tunnel, and it is an expression of time, and where it has no beginning and no end. As in life, the next generations keep following, and the color actually brings in this spontaneity and hope. And this is Hawaii we're at, and I think color is very much an expression of who we are. And the actual number of strips in here represent the number of people that actually helped to bring this design together. So even in that, there is some meaning to every element that was selected for this project. We also added, besides just a visual sense, I thought that by adding these chimes, which actually move in the wind, would call some attention to the design and be more interactive. So anybody viewing it would have they actually feel the process. It's not just a pretty design to look at, but a design to experience. And that's pretty much the essence of what we were trying to create, and in the workshop itself, explained so that the attendees would really grasp that. And I think they all really did, because we have a beautiful installation, which you could actually feel like maybe you are in Japan. It transcends, Hawaii and the Japanese aesthetics. So I hope everybody enjoys that. And it was built in the spirit of Ganbatte, which means to give it your best, to persevere, and for luck.
Well, that was awesome, Lois. Talk about really spirit of Ganbatte. You worked as you normally do to perfection. So we appreciate all that you do and all that you put into this beautiful video. Thank you.
Well, it's always that it's not just me, it's a team effort. We had a wonderful team that helped with the structure, and the team also understood the concept very well. I think because of our explanation, they knew what what they were getting into, and it wasn't just being dropped into a design. So I think it worked out well, and I'm really happy that we had the turnout we did, and enjoyed their company just as much in their helping to bring it to life.
Johnny, do we have some questions?
We do have some questions from our audience. What is the history of the spirit of Ganbatte?
This Ganbatte is very much, I think, ingrained in the Japanese culture. Whether you're from Japan or you're here in Hawaii, when I started thinking about all of this, I think we're all a product of our past, the past history. And for the most part, I would attest to that, because my parents, being the eldest in their generation, had to work really hard and persevere. And we had a big family, so they had to put all their siblings through college and all of that. And I think, being from that background, it's just instilled in me. It's not even a question, I think it's just part of who we are. And
I guess I can relate to that too.
Right.
Japanese.
Yep. Yeah.
Okay, the next question, Lois, is what language is Ganbatte?
Japanese.
Okay.
Yeah. It's Japanese. And then I think the other one is that we also often have to think about is gaman, right, Hitomi? Yeah. In the Japanese culture, you tend to hold back. You're not as expressive. I think Jody made a comment that he thought I was very quiet. But once you get to know me, I can be very talkative. But it's that reserve, that gamanness, or ganbatte, it's part of your culture, your history, your background.
Sounds to me kind of like quiet, but very effective.
Well, we try to be.
Okay, and there's one more question for you, Lois. What is the best approach for selecting colors?
Generally, the product itself is where I start from. And so you start with one thing, and before you know it, you're leaning into something else. But it's really important to bridge it, like how I bridged the fabric. So you had the yellow Oncidium, and then you had an orange branch, but that fabric bridged the two, because the fabric itself had both colors. And often when you were talking about flowers, you can just look at the parts of the flower, and the flower itself or the leaf itself will tell you what colors will work. And generally, if you like the colors, you're going to generally love the overall design. So in a competition, I think that's half the battle. Get your colors right. And then people will generally, I believe, and Hitomi can correct me, if your colors are right, I think it's going to steer you where the design is more acceptable. And I take the inspiration from the product. The plant material itself is where the colors are going to start from.
Thank you for your insight.
Thank you.
Okay. So I think I have a final question because you sort of answered some of the other questions that I had. But what was the real value of being on location at the gardens for you?
Oh, you can't never, I mean, the real life experience is so much more important than just hearing about it or textbook. When you go on site and you experience like the mud, the dirt being so soft, I'm never going to forget that. It's going to be like, oh, don't even think about 18-inch stakes anymore. Go straight to a 24, no matter whether your design is lightweight or heavy, because the stakes aren't cheap to begin with. So might as well invest in something. You might as well invest in something that's going to be more versatile. And yeah, it was pretty tricky that we had to change the design so much because we were on site and the conditions was just not what I had expected.
All that fun rain,
I mean, it
too,
truly was. You truly persevered through a lot of challenges that you had to deal with and come up with solutions that would override the situation. So that was brilliant because we got to see you going through all those
emotions.
Yes, we saw
all
you
those
do
emotions.
that.
You mean?
Yes.
Yeah. So
yes.
having the right team is also very, very important. And I knew Phoebe was going to be excellent for the task, and I got to give a shout out to Alberto, who came through he's a real problem solver and went and harvested the bamboo for me at 4:30 in the afternoon because we knew we had a job to do. My program was at 9, yours was at 8. So yeah, we managed, but excellent. I'm glad for the experience. It was a great experience.
And it was a stunning display. We even saw a wedding going through it, right? Wedding entourage.
Yes, there was fantastic. A wedding march that went through that, and I was like, "Wow, yay!" Nobody gets to actually experience it in real life. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Lois, for your powerful message of Ganbatte. I think you showed the result of it, the perseverance and accomplishment.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, Lois.